All right, this thing's working. All right, I'm going to get off the stage right now because that's going to have me all cooped up here. I'd like to start off, well, first of all, I'm Cameron Morrissey, published author, million followers on online media, and I don't care about any of that, and neither should you. What matters is that I have 20 plus years of management experience. And so you're going to hear a lot of surveys. You're going to hear a lot of research in regards to time management. But all of that has gone through the filter of some real-world application. And so that's what we're looking to do here today. Now, I like to start off these with, and again, if anybody has any space in their row, we might need to tuck in just a little bit as we have some people coming in late. I like to start off these sessions with a quote or with a saying. And the one that I chose for this was, you can accomplish anything in life that you set your mind to. And now what immediately happens is that the ceiling gets really interesting for a bunch of people as they roll their eyes. Because there's the obvious asterisk at the end of that, and that I'm 6'2", and I probably still can't make the NBA. But there's also the emotional reaction that actually happens before that, because we all bear the scars of having set our mind to something and have it not work out. And time management is certainly one of those particular topics. Most of us here have read a book. We've Googled for tips. We've asked our coworkers how they do it. We've done some more trial and error. We know that we have to work hard, but we also have to work smart. And we still are found wanting in this particular topic. And part of the reason for that is reality. It's life. You read something on the page and it works great in a bubble. But leadership and the organizational structure in today's workplace works against those things. There are those realities that create challenges for you as you work. And what I also want to highlight, though, is those challenges, there are also opportunities housed within that. And so I hope to go over a few of those today. What I want to challenge you with is a perspective change in regards to time management and taming your to-do list. I want you to think of time not as time spent, spending time on tasks, but I want you to look for those opportunities where you can invest time. Now, I'm talking to a bunch of accountants, so you all know the principle of compound interest. The idea in this session is for you to take a few practices and a few principles and a few tactics and carve out just a little bit of time where you can invest and you can get that return. And then you go through this cycle again. And I'll show it right here. The three things that we're going to look at, and I want to be practical in this session, so get out your notebooks if you haven't already, because I want you to be thinking about real-world applications. When you go back to the office later on this week, this is a perfect time for this, because you've been away having, sun or rain and fun here in D.C., not working, and so you're going to go back and there's a ton of things that you're going to need to do. The idea is that we work through prioritization, then negotiation, then delegation. And we talk about these terms kind of broadly, and you'll see what I mean as we go through these. We want to go through this cycle because every time, let's see if, that never works. Too small of a pointer for those in the back. When you get to that delegation, that's your payoff. That's where you make the investment, and that's where you get the return that makes everything easier down the road. So I want to just go ahead, we'll dive right into it and get going. If you do have questions, not afraid of questions, go ahead, put them through on the app. We have the mic here, and hopefully I can get through this presentation quick enough in a timely fashion to where we'll have some time for those. So, looking for those takeaways. The first thing we're going to talk about is priorities. Now, I know that you all know about priorities. I know that you're in touch with those priorities. We've gone through it. We've constantly reordering our to-do list every single day. But it is the foundation of everything that you do. Because there is a simple fact in today's workplace, and that is you cannot get everything done. Notice that the name of the session was Tame Your To-Do List. It wasn't Finish Your To-Do List. I got news for you. It's never going to happen. Not only is it because your boss would rain down a whole bunch of things to do if you ever got done with your to-do list, truthfully, most of the people in here would fill up their to-do list themselves with those things that you wanted to get to that just didn't even make the cut for it. So given that you can't get everything done, it's important that you are constantly in touch with your priorities so that you can get the most important things done. And so I wanted to talk just a few tactics, and again, I want you to apply this in your world. When you get back tomorrow, Thursday, to the office, how are you going to prioritize what you're going to tackle first? Because there's going to be a line at your office door. There probably is already one forming. The first place that I see leaders make mistakes with their priorities. Everybody's driving into work, and you got those few things that you want to get done with the day. You're taking the train into work. I'm over here on the East Coast, so people take the train. But what happens is you have those few priorities. You walk through the door, you get your cup of coffee, you say hi to a few people, you sit down at your desk, you open up email, and then lo and behold, at the end of the day, you're driving home or taking the train going, wait a second, I didn't get anything I wanted accomplished done today. Now, I'm not going to have everybody raise their hands because it'd be everybody raising their hands because that's what happens to everybody. What happened in that instant that you sat down and opened email, you made your priorities subservient to everybody else in the organization that was emailing you about their priorities. The first place that I would challenge you to make your changes is to take the first 15 minutes of your day, close the door, don't even open Outlook, and get to work on those 3 things. Now, you're not going to finish maybe even one of those things in 15 minutes. But what you're going to do is you're going to get started. And that starting creates momentum, where it's easier to pick it up as you go through the day. And what you're going to find is you can carve out 5 minutes here, 15 more minutes there, and you're actually getting some of those things done. Now, this is a principle that you don't have to take my word for it. All right? Big names, everybody knows them. They all wake up early. Now, why is that? Well, first of all, it's probably because they can work even later and put in 16-hour days. But the early part of the day is where they're not being distracted. If you think your inbox is blown up, I can't even imagine what these people's inboxes look like. And if you don't believe me, show up to your office at 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning. There ain't nobody there to bother you. All right? Now, you don't have to wake up at, my goodness, what is that, 3:45 like Tim Cook? That's insane. But what you can do is you can let your team know. From 8 o'clock to 8:15, from 9 o'clock to 9:15, I'm working on some of my stuff and getting that going. So if you have an emergency, sure. And trust me, they'll knock on the door with an emergency. But you can get some of those first things rolling. And that can be huge as far as the productivity that you get throughout the day. Get success with this, and then you can start thinking about pulling 15 minutes in the middle of the day or 15 minutes at the end of the day to reset your priorities and clean some things up. But look for those opportunities to put your priorities first. All right. Now, many of you have seen this. It's the Stephen Covey 4 quadrants here as far as time management is concerned. But I like to kind of put some labels on here that talk about it in the real world. When we talk priorities, it's importance and it's urgency. Okay? So the top right box, that's the obvious. The big projects we need to take care of. The things that are most urgent, obvious. The second one, top left, is the tricky. It's the stuff that doesn't have the urgency. It's the big project that's going on that can wait, that doesn't have a deadline for another week, another month. Those are the things that we use as an excuse to move down into the bottom right. The tempting are other people's priorities. I'm just going to call it for what it is. Now, there's lots of times where it makes sense to help your coworker out. And we're going to talk in the negotiating section about dealing with this bottom right corner. Because it's easy enough to say, you know what? The more time you spend in those top 2 boxes, the more productive you're going to be. The more important items you're going to take care of. And that's going to make you effective in your role and as a leader. Now, I like to break this box out just a little bit more because I could almost do a little chant here. What is your boss going to say when you say, hey, which of my orders or which of my tasks is the most important? Well, they're all important. Okay? So if you want to break that down, take a look. Effort to complete versus importance. You can break that box down a little bit more. So you've got that high important, you've got that high urgency item. which one do you tackle first? Tackle the one that you're going to get done quickest. Part of that is momentum. We are creatures of momentum. Once we get rolling with something, it's easier to keep it going. That's why it's so important to get into focus. But this is your 80-20 box. That 20% of the effort that you're going to spend that's going to give you 80% of that benefit. 2 more concepts and then we'll sum up the prioritization. You can't talk about priorities without talking about multitasking. And I will not bore you with the dozens of studies that show that multitasking is not effective. All right? Multitasking is a necessary evil. It is necessary, but it is evil. I will throw one study out there because I like it, because it's from a professor at Stanford, Clifford Nass, who was actually in awe of multitaskers. He thought it was a great thing. Apparently a researcher that didn't do his research, thought everybody was off base. And so he pulled together almost 300 students. And he did an assessment about their multitasking, and he separated them into great multitaskers and poor multitaskers. And what he ended up finding, talking to the New York Times, was that he was stunned because the high multitaskers, those who thought they were great at multitasking, sucked in every single productivity aspect that he was looking at. It was the low multitaskers, because the high multitaskers are the ones that are suckers for irrelevancy. That's your cheating on this box. You know what? I'm going to try to take care of this and the obvious thing at the same time. And what happens is you end up with that. Not really accomplishing anything that you want to. All right? Again, this is real. We all have to multitask. It's a requirement. But look for those moments where you can focus on one thing. Just one thing. You can handle 3 items at once if you consider that once a 15-minute block of time. Because that's how long it's going to take to do those 3 things that you're working on. Just break it out and work on one in every 5-minute section. All right, I will not belabor multitasking, but the other thing that I like to talk about when I work with leaders and do some individual one-on-one coaching, almost all of them have those big priority items, those highly important projects, those things that they are working on, but they are planning it. They have not taken the first action. So just a nod almost to procrastination. When you have those important items that are in those top 2 boxes, take your first action. I do not know the exact directions to get to the mall and see the Washington Monument. But I know that I'm going to have to get out of National Harbor to do so. So I can take that step while I figure out the rest of it. I would encourage you, there is one simple step behind all of your big priority items. It may be calling a meeting. It may be making the phone call, requesting the report. Do it. Get that one thing going in your project, and you'll be surprised how much easier it is to string together 2 and 3 things. So, again, this is practical. I want you taking this back with you later on this week. What is one takeaway from this? What is one thing that resonated? It may not even be anything I talked about. It may be just something else that you were noodling in your brain while you were going through this. All right? What is one thing that can improve your prioritization? Because this is the first step in getting to the point of being able to invest that time. Any questions? Good. Now, prioritization was, I want to say, the easy part. That's the one that everybody's familiar with. All right? Negotiation is the tough part. This is the life factor. This is the reality. You set your mind to getting what you want out of life, but this is where it all falls apart. It's the people that come in your door with a new priority. It's a boss that juggles the priorities that you already had. The negotiation is your means of carving out that time to finish those priorities. I'm a big fan of servant leadership. You have to be a proper leader, you have to be serving others. That's where all of your productivity is as a leader, is not in your own actions, but in the actions of your team and those around you. However, servant leadership, what I see, has gone overboard. And it means that I am subservient to everything else that is going on. There's studies that are out there, I think by the firm I Done This, that found that 41% of your to-do list items don't ever get completed. Interestingly, 50% of the to-do list items that are completed were put on there in the same day. I call this fighting for 5. And the concept is taking a little bit of balance to servant leadership. The person pops in your door, hey, I need help with this particular thing. Your response is usually, okay, no problem, how can I help you? There is a huge amount of time that is lost in the day switching tasks and getting back in the flow of things. What I would challenge you to do, and in so many of these cases, what I recommend is actually telling your team ahead of time, telling your coworkers ahead of time what you're doing and what you're working on. The first 15 minutes, let them know. Fighting for 5 is a concept to let them know about. Can you hold on for just 2 minutes? Can I come see you in just 10 minutes? Let me finish this task right here. You can invite them to have a seat if it's going to be something quick, if you're just finishing up an email that you need to send out. Fight for those little 5-minute periods of time and finish your work. You will gain, in some cases, hours a day of productivity by keeping your focus on those particular things. Now, many of you may be saying, I don't want to do that. I know what that feels like, because we've all gone to our boss and said, hey, I need help with it. Sure, can you come back in 10 minutes? Oh, wait, can you come back in 30 minutes? Oh, wait, can you come back in an hour? Oh, wait, they're gone. All right. So what I mean by this is implicitly, you have to follow up. If you follow up, nobody is going to have a problem with this. And if they do, it's because they didn't pipe up because they had an emergency and they didn't claim it as an emergency. So follow up with them with those 5 minutes. You are gone for a ton of time over the course of a week. You're in meetings where nobody can get a hold of you. You're at lunch, nobody can get a hold of you. Them not being able to access you for 5 minutes in 90+% of the cases is not a problem. But you do have to follow up. So I'll say that one more time. The other thing that happens, and this happens a lot with your to-do list, and I'm a big fan. Myself, one of the ways that I manage my to-do list is I take my to-do list items and I plug them into my calendar. 15-minute time periods, 10-minute time periods. This is when I'm going to do this, 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 and this. But what happens for a lot of us is we get overloaded. And it doesn't allow any flexibility at all. You're going to come into the office on Thursday or Friday of this week, and somewhere around 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, there's going to be a crisis of some nature. You don't know what it is right now, but you're pretty sure that it's going to take place. Block out that time. Again, people are flexible with your time. With your time. Hey, can you meet at 11? No, I can't. I already have a meeting. Okay, well, how about 1? Take a half hour in the morning and a half an hour in the afternoon just to be able to stay on track. One of the reasons that you don't get those 3 things done that you were thinking about as you were coming into work is because something happens, some crisis, and it gets you off track, off the rails, and you can't get back on. Those are your moments where you can get back on track. Love this slide. I will ask for a show of hands on this one. How many people in here have heard of the concept of decision fatigue? Psychologists, neurologists have looked at this before, and we only have so many good decisions over the course of a day. And for those of you that didn't laugh and don't believe me, that's why it takes 3 hours to buy a car, is because you're going to make the bad decisions at the end. It's why there's all the candy and the gum at the registers in the grocery store. because you're done fighting with your kids the rest of the time you were in the store, and now you're just going to have to give in. Jonathan Levav's a professor out of Stanford who's done a lot of research in regards to this. Some interesting studies that he found was that bespoke suit makers, so custom-made suits, they could increase the price of the suit 20 to 30% by increasing the number of choices that you had to make to put the suit together. And then obviously the salesperson is directing you in a certain direction. They had something like 43 different types of buttons that you could put on there. But the one that I like, and I'll ask for another show of hands, how many of you have done time in an Israeli prison? Don't. But if you happen to spend time in an Israeli prison and you came up for parole, any ideas on what time of day you would want your parole hearing? Well, I hinted right at the beginning. But there's another factor to it. It's after any break. The studies that were done, you move from 60% plus chance of getting parole to almost zero before lunch. You laugh, but it's scary. So when we talk about your items and we talk about negotiation, negotiate your day. When you do those high priority items, when you have the important meeting, the important phone call, look to do it after you are rested. You have less decision fatigue and you will perform better. The other favorite one that I have is Parkinson's Law. And Parkinson's Law states that the work required for a task to be completed will expand so as to fill the time allotted for its completion. And we've all seen this. We all know this. All right? Heck, the last half of that graph, that's how I got through college. But what I encourage everybody to do is when you have some priorities, and this is why I encourage action right away, but shrink the time for completion. We all know that this last part of the graph here, I'll work this side of this last part of the graph over here, this is where we're focused, where we're most productive. My goodness, I was writing papers an hour before they were due. Look for opportunities to shorten that time because you will get more focus behind what you're working on and get more done. Now, you don't want to be unreasonable with this. I like to do just kind of a simple little 5-point scale. If you're working with teams and you're handing out deadlines, or you're looking at deadlines yourself as far as what you receive from your boss, a 1 on a scale of 1 to 5, where it's too long, might be, I can get that done, sure. When you're happy about it because you know you have all the time in the world to get it done, that's probably a signal it's too late, or it's too long of a time period. A 2 might be, okay, maybe no smile. 3, okay. 4 might be, okay. 5 would be, okay. All right. Look at your emotional reactions to the tasks that you receive, the deadlines that you receive, and the deadlines that you give to others. And look to kind of compress those as much as possible. Now, the caveat to this, of course, is you don't want to be overloading others. You don't want them to be breaking priorities that they might have. So the question is, what would prevent you from meeting this particular deadline? Then you open a dialogue, well, I'm working on this. Okay, well, that's more important. So get that done first. Too many times, we give out deadlines, or we receive deadlines, and there is no discussion about how it's going to impact other things that are going on until it's too late. Open that discussion, look to compress, and then you can manage it a little bit better. The 2-minute drill. Part of taming that to-do list is taming what Tim Ferriss calls the monkey mind. We feel cluttered. You're in the middle of the week, you've got a whole bunch of things going on, you're juggling a whole bunch of different balls. Your mind's cluttered, which doesn't help it focus at all. There is something called the Zeigarnik effect. and it's from a study of German cafes, hence the name. But what it found is that incomplete tasks stick in the subconscious recesses of your mind. And the way that they studied this is in the cafes, right before the waiter would close out the bill, they would ask the waiter, well, what did that table have? And the waiter could lay out almost all of what they had. If the waiter presented the bill and then they asked the waiter, what did that group have? They had no idea in the world. Those unfinished tasks stick in your head and start messing with your focus. There's a principle from Tom Tracy. I'm not going to take credit for this one. If it takes 2 minutes or less to complete, do it in that instant moment. We've all had that happen where the email pops up. Disable that, by the way. Oh, what's that? We open it. Okay, I'll get to that later. And then 30 minutes later, we go back into our inbox and we read that email again. Okay, I'll get to that at the end of the day. And then you get to it at the end of the day, and maybe you finally complete it, maybe you don't. But you know what? You read that darn email 3 times. Just get it done. I tell people, as far as managing your email, look to batch it as much as possible, whatever that looks like in your environment. Again, you are away from email, hopefully, for meetings. You're away from email maybe for lunch. There are plenty of times that you don't respond like that when you get a particular email. Now, we do have our bosses that demand that. Okay, fine. That's where you find that flexibility. Maybe it's every 15 minutes you go into email and take a look at it. Maybe it's every 30 minutes. Maybe it's every hour. But maintain your focus, because that email pulls that focus away, and that decreases the productivity and your ability to get things across the finish line. Couple of principles in regards to that I want you to kind of stick in your mind. The first one is Ohio. Only handle it once. Whether it's 2 minutes, whether it is 5 minutes. Again, task switching will kill you and your productivity. If you have it, bring some focus to it. The other one to use in regards to email. Do it, delegate it, defer it, or delete it. One of 4 boxes. If you go through your inbox every half hour, you're timely in that case, and you go through every 2-minute item you can take care of and you get rid of everything else, what you'll find is you can move through 10 minutes once you do it. Challenge people to actually get through and get back to inbox 0 before. It's amazing. It's amazing what that does to your mind to have it. A lot of you had to do that before coming to the conference. So look for those opportunities where you can bring just a little bit more focus and bring a little bit of that clutter together. Okay? So the one thing for this section, we're looking to pair this, all right? One way that you can work on or get clearer on your priorities, what it is that you're working on. One technique that you can start working on when you get back to the office, as far as bringing a little bit more focus, bringing a little bit more productivity to your day. Just looking to pair those things, because I want you to try this out and see what happens when you bring it all around. Giving one more second. Lots of people looking, nobody writing. Okay. There they go. All right. All right, delegation. So again, we're talking delegation a little bit in a broader respect. So not just delegating tasks to do, but delegating knowledge gathering, how you're getting your priorities, that sort of thing. But with that said, the first thing that I am going to talk about is delegating. One of the reasons that everybody fails to delegate is A, they were never taught how. Everybody knows that you're supposed to delegate, right? But nobody teaches anybody how to do it. I know how to win a football game, but I don't know how to play or beans. Too many times what you're delegating is one-off tasks. Random things that come in. Okay, you know what? Sam will take care of that. You know what? Veronica's going to go ahead and handle this. All right? Bring some intention if you're in a leadership role, or even if you're in a role where it's a shared working environment. Look to see what you can delegate that is frequent and takes very little time to train. What you are looking for is those simple, quick wins where you can get a return on that time that you are investing. Okay? This is the good section, where we're looking for those opportunities that are going to gain us time down the road. And so, start small. We're looking to open up a crack this week in your calendar with priorities and negotiation, and we're going to put something in there where you can gain some time with it. Okay? The other aspect, because I do want to talk a little bit about delegation for those that are in here with it. The other issue, not that you delegate the wrong thing, but that when you delegate it, what happens? It's like tennis. It comes back at you. Right? One of the best ways to get on top of that is for updates and deadlines. Okay? When you give out a delegated task, make sure that the deadline is clear. But I want you to set an update ahead of time. Because what that does is that allows you to manage how far the task is coming along and the quality. Because it isn't just that people don't do it because they got pulled in another direction, it's because they do it terribly. And so the sooner you can recognize that through an update, the better. One last slide on delegation. I'll move on to the next one here. A few other things. Start delegating with your best. Your best employee, your superstar, your rock star. That cuts down on that training time and the time that you need to invest. Because what happened? Oh yeah, I want to delegate that monthly report, but it's going to take me 4 hours to train somebody to do it. Never mind that it takes an hour every month for you to do it, and you'd get that back in 4 months. But start with your best. Start with the simplest thing. Just an initial win on something that is done on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis that you don't have to touch anymore is that time that you're getting back. And when you get a win, you've started a streak and you can get more. The other one that I like to do is delegate something you don't like to do. Doesn't mean that you can delegate everything that you don't like to do, all right? But where you can, delegate those. You're motivated to delegate it. You want it to be successful. You're going to follow all of these steps to make sure it gets off of your plate. But those are some of the simple ones. Two other key principles in delegation. Not just how to do it, but why it is important. Why does this task need to be done? What is the purpose of this report? Why is it being done? Why is it being requested every 2 weeks? Get into that why. First of all, it helps the person understand the priority. But second of all, it helps them fill in the blanks. Because I know you think you are absolutely great at describing everything and every step along the way. But you're not as good as you think you are. Probably. So, the other thing is examples. Wherever possible, have the example. I won't belabor that. I put it up on the board. The second area of investment and delegating is delegating where you're getting your information. Because the information is what you're going to use to make better decisions down the road. All right? The more you can improve your listening, the more information you're going to get. The more information you get, the better decisions you make, the more successful you're going to be in your career. Now, the hack for listening to people is actually asking them questions. If you want to get better at listening, then get in practice of asking questions. When you're in a conversation, ask them why. I need you to do this. I'm not being a jerk, but why? I talk about 5 questions a lot when I work with people and leaders. And they're 5 questions that give you an enormous amount of information. So especially if you're in a leadership role. But if you're going into a client, it's another great way to ask questions. What do you see going right? What do you see going wrong? Where are there opportunities we need to take advantage of? Where are there problems we need to fix? And how can I help you do your job better? Those in leadership roles here, if you asked every single one of your employees those 5 questions, you would get a bevy of new information that you were unaware of, and you will get clarification behind why a whole bunch of things are taking place in your organization. Then what you do is you act on it. And when you do that, then you can come back, ask these again, you're going to get a whole bunch more information, because once people know that you actually listen to them, they are far more apt to give you their feedback. The other question, now you can ask these 5 questions if you do one-on-ones, every couple of weeks, whatever, but if you keep asking these questions, it gets kind of weird. Oh, yes. They are, what do you see going right in the organization? What do you see going wrong in the organization? Where are there opportunities we need to take advantage of? Where are there problems we need to fix? And how can I help you do your job better? Thank you. I always go too fast through those. The question you can ask all the time without it being kind of weird and awkward is, what do you think? We have this problem. What do you think? I need you to go see this client. What do you think? Ask them for their opinion. You open up a dialogue. They recognize that you're actually listening to them. The American Management Association did a study, and it found that 59% of employees don't think that their managers listen to them. That not listening and micromanagement are the number 1 and number 2 reasons why people leave employers. They are the biggest frustrations. Peppering "what do you think" into your conversations can be enormously helpful in overcoming that issue and you getting more information. Yes, it takes time. None of these investments in time are free. But if you make the wise ones, they're the ones that are going to give you the information that makes better decisions, that saves you time fixing a problem you could have gotten ahead of before. The last area of delegation is delegating skill sets. Time spent investing in the skills of your team. It's hard to delegate things. It's hard to get super high performance out of people if they don't have the skill sets to do so. Now, what happens with a lot of employee development plans is the employee picks these things out. And that's important. They need to have some skin in the game. But what I would encourage you to do, and for the purposes of this exercise in time management, is look at the skills. Look at the things that you're going to need from your coworkers, from your employees, 6 months down the road, 9 months down the road, a year down the road. What are the skills that are going to be required for the organization to excel? And that's where you look to start matching people up with those, so that you don't have a big project that starts rolling out and, oh shoot, now before we get started we need to train Jennifer up on how to do this. Or we need to send Bill off to this training really quick. Get ahead of those things and invest in your team. Okay, so we've talked about priorities and getting a little bit clearer as far as prioritization is concerned. Talked about some negotiating tactics, something that you can play with to help you get some things across the finish line once you get back to the office. Okay? So, what is one thing from this list, maybe something that was inspired, that you can put aside some time? I want this to be something small. I don't want you to be tackling the world with this right away. I want you to do a couple of spins through that wheel of compounding interest as far as time is concerned. So, what is one thing that you can have a goal of working on? Go ahead and write that down with everything. Good. All right, I like to spin through this presentation nice and quick because, well, it's about time management. But also because the devil is in the details. Okay? I've given this presentation, I've given this talk, I've worked with leaders, done workshops on it, so I know there's hard questions out there. So I want you to go ahead and submit those questions. We've got microphones, or just shout it out, Any questions? Because I guarantee if you've got some resistance to something on here, there are 50 other people in this room that have the exact same resistance. Yes? You said something, 4 things to do with emails. Oh, the 4 Ds. The 4 Ds in regards to email. Do it, delegate it, defer it, create a little bucket for those, delete it.
And what do you do with the deferred emails?
That's good. That's good. So, one thing I didn't talk about when we talk about that Stephen Covey 4 quadrants thing and staying in those top 2 areas, fighting to be as in the important as much as possible, is that those lower importance items, first of all, have a nasty tendency of disappearing. If you don't help your coworker because you didn't get to the email, they go get help somewhere else or they handle it themselves. Again, there's balance here. You want to be a good team member. I'm not saying not to do that, but look for that balance where you can. The other thing about low priority items is they will turn into high priority items if left to sit for long enough. And that's why you need to get in touch with that prioritization, because what was a low priority last week is now all of a sudden a hot priority. Great question. Other questions? Oh, making us work. And I want you to think, what are the things that are prohibiting you from putting some of these principles into practice? It could be a person. It could be the structure of the organization. Meetings. We got the microphone working down there. And then I'll get to meetings.
I don't have a question. I just want to see if the mic could make it back here. Just kidding. Now, you talked about asking, what are we doing right or what are we doing wrong? I can see that as taking even more of my time.
Yeah. So, I like to think about a lot of these on a continuum. So, you're absolutely correct. The first time you ask those questions, it could be a 30-minute conversation with one person. Okay? But if you have this on a continuum where a month later you ask them the same question, it's only going to take 10 minutes. And then it takes 5 minutes. Anybody who has had regular one-on-ones with their boss knows this phenomenon. It takes a while, and then all of a sudden they're 5 and 10-minute meetings. What I recommend in those cases where you think it can go really long is you pick and choose who you start with. It may be that you pick 2 people that will give you the honest feedback that you're looking for, but will give you the short version, or the one without a whole lot of sass to it. Good question. In any of these, if I need clarification on any of these questions, let me know, and I'm happy to clarify it as well.
Hi. I'd like for you to talk about, and I know this is not a solve the world, save the world type thing. However, I'd like for you to talk about tasks that are your priority or your team's priority that involve other cross-functional teams that need to be involved in order to get like the task done. And it might not be a priority to them. How do you manage that?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fantastic, and that's very real. First of all, make sure that they understand the task that you're working on, the project you're working on, and why it fits into the overall goals of the organization. They do have skin in the game as far as, I'm trying to find a good place where I can see everybody. Okay, let's try that and not fall off. Excuse me. They do have skin in the game as far as the organization being successful. Those are those large goals, and look to tie it to those particular ones. Your cheat to this is to try to come up with some sort of quid pro quo. All right? So, is it a situation where you can help them with something? I know that increases your workload. All right? But it gets something across the finish line so you can get it done. Okay? There's no easy way out of that particular situation because that's the reality. The different departments that we work in all have different priorities and different goals that they're going towards. Tie things to higher goals that both of you are working towards, and look for those opportunities where you can help them help you. Hope that helps. Okay, you go there, but I'm going to handle meeting situation first while you get the mic. So, one of the big struggles is meetings. Okay, so what I looked at, if you're in a leadership role, this is something that can really help out. However, if you're not, you can go ahead and at least pose the questions. Okay? I look to cut meetings in half in a whole bunch of different ways. All right? So first of all, there are recurring meetings that were in regards to a project that started 2 years ago, that was completed a year ago, yet you are still meeting once a week to talk about it. See if you can cut that to every 2 weeks. Okay? Ask the meeting organizers for those meetings where you know where they tend to go long. Hey, can we cut this down to 15 minutes? For the meetings that you send out, hey, I know that the default in Outlook and everywhere is 30-minute meetings. They can be 10-minute meetings. You'd be surprised how focused people get when that happens. Look to cut down the attendees in half. The more people that are in a meeting, the less likely the meeting is going to produce some sort of great result. Keep the numbers finite. So look to cut those 3 things out. Look to cut them in half. The frequency of your meetings, the length of your meetings, and the time, and the number of people in your meetings. Even if you can get 1 or 2 wins, that's what? Half an hour a week? An hour a week, depending on what it is? That's time saved for everybody's sake. Because we all know that once we step into that meeting, everybody's going to be there until the meeting ends, because it's chit-chat time. I remember getting my first corporate job, and I stepped into a meeting. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm getting paid for not doing anything. You come from that hourly position where you're tied to the phone and the customer. My goodness, meetings are great. So look for that. Sorry.
I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more about strategies to help a team that maybe has a culture of creating a sense of urgency that's unnecessary based on their idea of that's how success looks like, or how we get stuff done and how we're successful is based on this constant sense of urgency that is unnecessary, and it's almost so ingrained in the culture that if you were the one person who was like, no, that can wait, then you're the pariah.
And so having that larger discussion ahead of time. So getting ahead of it and saying, hey, I'm looking to bring some focus. We have a lot of urgency behind these issues. Everybody fights for urgency, and that's the great cheat that's out there. What I want us to do is I want us to finish some things, plan some things out. Whatever that looks like in your organization, I'd open up the discussion first before I started fighting for 5 minutes. And what I'd do is I would encourage the rest of the team to do the same thing, because everybody is in the same boat that you are. I can't get anything done because, somebody raises the white flag of urgency in regards to their particular issue to get it done. Okay? You want to have that broader discussion, and maybe it's just you talk it through with your boss so that they're clear on what it is that you're doing and what you're looking to accomplish with it. Because we do have that culture where somebody says, what are you working on? Well, I'm working on this and this and this and this and this. And the question's never asked, well, should you be working on any of those things? But I'm busy. And that's the reality in a lot of situations. But I'd bring it a broader discussion in before you start attempting to do that, and set some specifics for what you're looking for. So it also may be that you go kind of retroactively with your own productivity and what you're able to accomplish, and to do kind of an A/B before and after sort of thing in regards to it. I hope that helps. It's tough in those environments where everybody is going to be looking at you like you're not doing anything because you're pushing them off, when in truth you're accomplishing twice as much as everybody else is actually getting finished. Next question. Up front here. Oh, she's confident. She's got the loud enough voice.
Do you have any favorite tools that you use in technology to help you with your to-do list, priorities, and so forth? Any favorites?
So personally, I keep it very simple for myself. So I will work a to-do list. I will shove it into my calendar, and shoehorn it in there so that I can keep on top of it. That's what works for me. I've tried Franklin Covey planners, and I've tried some of the online tools that are out there. But what I encourage you to do is experiment. Because what works for me isn't going to work for you. And what works for you isn't going to work for either of the people that are sitting next to you right now. It's all very individual. And what I'll also tell you is it changes over time. Depending on your environment, depending on you and yourself, it changes what's going to work for you and what isn't going to work for you. What other questions? Who thinks one of the areas is complete BS? I'll take a hard question. She does.
I won't say I think it's BS, but it's something I don't necessarily agree with. Mm-hmm. And that's about being tied to your email 24/7. Mm-hmm. I tend to be one of those people that tries to segment that so my email is not running my life. And I feel like we should all rise up and rebel against this. So could you comment on that?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'll start the movement. Back in my career, I'm from Las Vegas, so the humidity's killing me here. But I spent a decade in hospitality, and that was 24/7, a decade ago, working on, text messaging and BlackBerries and that sort of thing. I'm sure it was beepers before I got there. And what I tell people to do is set expectations. Set the expectation. If you set the expectation that if somebody emails you on your day off, you're going to respond in 30 minutes, you are tying yourself to that expectation. I used to go hiking specifically for the purpose of being out of cell phone range. Because I could come back and say, I emailed you 3 hours ago. Oh, I was out hiking. I was in a movie. Whatever those excuses are. So train your team. Train your boss. You'll get to that email. But it might be an hour. It might be 2 hours. Look for those batches. I'm a big fan of the work-life integration. You just have to make it work. Maybe that's you check emails in the morning on a Saturday and in the evening on a Saturday or something like that. So you're getting back to people. But yeah, and I'm right there with you. It used to kill me. I'd answer my boss at 11 o'clock at night, knowing full well that not a darn thing could happen until 9 o'clock in the morning, but I had to give that response. Okay, so I just grouped all of those responses at the end of my day. I've also been in organizations that have tried No Email Friday. That was a joke. So going cold turkey is not something that I think is really effective in today's workplace because, yes, you have that mindset. And yes, you can probably get everybody to raise their hands, but truth be told, half of the people in here want that response from you on a Sunday for whatever reason. So I recommend giving them that response, just doing it in a mindful way. All right, plenty of time for questions. Yes? It's good to have the mic. That way everybody else hears the question, too.
Do you have any suggestions for, so I work in HR, if you have employees who are disorganized and you want to, like, any resources for kind of like giving them tools, like giving them like kind of directions for how to experiment, how to organize themselves, or any books they could read or things like a webinar I could have them watch, something to get them started?
I'm sure there's something on Lynda in regards to organization and how to do it. Again, what my concern is always pigeonholing them with a particular philosophy that may or may not work. What I do recommend for those that are disorganized, and this works for your boss too, pick something small that you can give them advice on. It's the smallest step. What is that? Okay, at 8 o'clock, you're going to pick the top 3 things that you want to do today. Can be an organizing step, depending on what you're looking to organize. And then you follow up, or you have their boss follow up at 8:05. Have you picked your 3 things?
Yeah, this is hard because I'm trying to give a tool to the boss to give to their employee.
Yeah, I don't have a specific tool, flat out. You're welcome to try to Google some. But I recommend starting with something small and obvious. Work with their boss to figure out where the main pain points are and what is the simplest thing. Start with one thing. Because part of the problem with so many systems for disorganized people is they don't feel they have the time and they're too cluttered in their brain to actually work a system all the way through to its benefit. So start hyper small with one win, and then 2 weeks later, tack on the next thing. And then 3 weeks later, tack on the next thing. Get the win, lock it in, and then you start building that habit a little bit better. That's my recommendation. Questions all the way in the back.
And I'm going to do an online one real quick, just so we don't forget them.
You want a break?
No, I'm getting my steps in. How often do you suggest reprioritizing your to-do list?
Well, I'm trying to get out of the whole, well, it depends, sort of, baloney answer there. But it really does. It does partially depend. I say every day. I'll go ahead and come down on it and say every day, because it'll get reprioritized in the middle of the day by somebody else, and it'll most likely be obvious that it needs to be reprioritized. But I am a big fan of not just the first 15, I'm a big fan of the last 15, where you set your intention for the next day and set those priorities ahead of time so that you can go ahead and work those through. I didn't include it in this presentation, but there's plenty of research that those things that you set those intentions to that night, your mind actually works on those things throughout the course of the evening. So that Zeigarnik effect is actually kind of playing into that as well. But yeah, set the intention the night before.
Can you talk about good versus perfect? I have a team member who I feel like it takes him longer because he wants everything perfect, and I kind of just want it good enough to move on.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Yeah, what is that saying? The enemy of good is perfect, or something like that? Yeah, and this is what I run into, like when I talked about the one thing. That is oftentimes what is holding everybody up. I want to plan more. I can't see all the way to where my destination is. I want to have everything all neat and tidy. Just one thing. So what I might want to say, it depends on the environment just a little bit. I would have a default to action on it. So default to action and getting started. So that prevents them from planning the entire, universe. And then at the end, get them focused on another action in another place and move on. But you also, I'm going to say, and this is the hard answer to the hard question, and that is you need to have that conversation with them as well. I need you to move on. I need help in this area. Yes, it could be better. It can always be better. But at a certain point, we have to move on to those things that are going to give us more benefit. That's not the fun answer to give, but that is having that open and honest dialogue with people that gets things kind of going. And ask them their thoughts on it. Bring it in as a dialogue, too. What do you think? I've got two things for you to work on. You could either make this perfect, put the icing on the cake on that, or we can build the next cake. What do you think about this? What do you think is a better use of your time from an organizational perspective? Because they may very well recognize that they're perfect. They may even deny it to you. That's another human behavior thing. You'll absolutely deny the thing that you absolutely know that you're guilty of. So they can recognize it, and they will take actions. They just won't to your face. Yes?
Can you repeat that?
That thing, yeah. If you ask, what do you think all the time, does that make you seem like a wishy-washy leader? And that's a great question. Part of it is that, I'm going to come down off of here. No, because part of it is they are going to give you an answer and an idea that isn't going to work. And at that point, you can explain why it doesn't work. And that's where you throw out your idea. So just because you say, what do you think, doesn't mean that you don't know what you're going to do. Again, just being honest. But you're inviting more input and more information to validate that decision and to create buy-in. Because a lot of times, they'll tell you exactly what they're supposed to do. Those needy employees that you have that pop in and ask you questions on every little thing that they're doing and kill your time. Well, what do you think you should do? They almost always have the right answer. And then you can direct them, well, next time you don't need to come to me, just keep doing that. And you do that over and over again. But that's part of the cheat to it, is that they won't give you the right answer. And so you can talk through that, and then they will see that you have a line of logic behind your decisions, which actually speeds up decision-making down the road. You'll get buy-in a little bit easier. But be mindful, too, of the what do you think. There is balance on all of these things. So you don't want to, you can manage it and, not come across like you don't know anything and you're basically letting the inmates run the asylum. So, good question. Yes?
Hi. Could you elaborate on the negatives of multitasking so as to maybe encourage some of us who are multitaskers to maybe rethink that approach?
Yeah. What the research shows is switching tasks, moving between multiple tasks, wastes time. Some cases, they've measured up to 40% of a day lost, bouncing between particular tasks that are going on. Now, what happens when you multitask is you can't bring your full attention to whatever it is that you're doing. And so what that does is that either lengthens the amount of time to get to the quality that you want, or it decreases the quality that you're looking for in that particular time period. And whether it is, University of Utah has done studies, if you're talking on your phone while you're driving, A, you're going to get more accidents, but B, it's going to take you longer to get to your destination, is what they found. Students at Western Washington University were asked to hold a conversation on their phone while they walked across campus. 75% of them didn't notice the guy in a clown costume riding a unicycle that went in front of their path. You don't bring that full attention, all right? So those are just some of the things that come up. But you're not going to find a study that is going to say that multitasking is effective for productivity. Is it necessary? Yes. We can't get away from it sometimes, but it's something to be eliminated as much as possible. And those studies that you do find that say that multitasking is great, you will probably be able to note the flaw in what the research was saying and trying to get across. Other questions? I got anonymous ones online. These are the good ones.
Well, what are some of the best books or podcasts on this topic? What are some of the best podcasts and books on this topic or topics?
I'm going to go out of the box on books. And I'm going to say Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Why the chuckles? The stuff from Brian Tracy is really good. Eat the Frog is a great concept. And he's got a few different ones that are out there, and I like those very much. And you can pick and choose. He builds his books within a framework, but you can pull parts of the framework out of it to match whatever your environment is. That's great. I don't know enough about podcasts as of yet. I truthfully have only gotten into the podcast game maybe about a year ago.
One called The One Thing.
What?
The One Thing podcast.
That's a great, yes, which is a book I love.
The One Thing?
The One Thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, like your prioritization.
Yeah, there you go.
Great. And a good book I've been hearing.
Yeah. Excellent book. Long to be talking about one thing, but he really drives the point. He really drives the point home. But it does set that intention on what is your priority. I'll sum up the book for you. What is your one priority? The one thing that you can do that is going to impact your business the most, your career the most. Focus everything on that one thing. And he's got a lot of great stories in how that works really well for you. Other questions? I see a bunch of them popping up there.
So you talked about procrastination and showed the graph. And so the question is, what is the best way to to not do this, but then I wanted to add on a little bit. I heard Adam Grant speak last week, and he talked about a study he's done where if you don't procrastinate, like you may not get the full like creativity because you're getting it done quickly. But then if you do the big slope, you're just doing it quickly and it's not great. So like, what are your thoughts on not procrastinating, but trying to find maybe a good balance? I mean, I did like your emotions thing, but maybe just expand on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we talk creative endeavors, and I'm talking to a bunch of accountants, but, you know, hey, well, there's the old joke.
HR. There's HR over there.
Well, there's the old joke, you know, what's 1 + 1? What do you want it to be? But, so I know you're creative. But yes, definitely in creative endeavors, there's a time to stew. What I also recommend, though, when you're talking creativity is talk in drafts. So see it through. If there's a creative element to what you're working on and you want to procrastinate to be able to get the full benefit out of it, don't procrastinate one draft. Do multiple drafts and get better at it. Procrastination, I'm really going to hit hard on one simple thing. What is the simplest thing that you can do that you're procrastinating that task on? Is it calling the meeting? Is it emailing somebody for a report? Some small bit of information, not even a big thing. But get that momentum going. Starting is the hardest part in so many of these things. That's why that first 15 is so important, is starting those tasks and getting those things rolling and off of your plate and in motion, and it's easier to keep that snowball going. I'll come back to procrastination when I think about something else on it.
And then just going back to distractions, do you have any pointers or best practices that you've seen or seen in research or something about just cell phones and just about cell phones, like being distracting as I'm like sitting here, texts are popping up?
Yeah, as you've got your cell phone out.
I've been taking notes on it. I am a millennial.
So many, and most of you have heard them all before. I'll be completely honest with you. Get in the practice of turning it off. Maybe just on the weekends. God, it feels weird. Really weird. Like you just got unplugged from the collective mind of the universe or something. Put it face down. You can play those games where in a meeting, everybody puts their cell phone in the center and stacks them up. That's a great way to do it. The cell phone basket. If you want people's attention, start with something. For the first 15, I'll tell you, put the cell phone in your drawer. Even if you hear it buzzing, it's a distraction. I get it. But, you know, it's away and out of sight. Give yourself some practice in safe moments away from that cell phone, and it's easier to break that cycle when you're in more important moments and it feels weird. That's my big thing, is just start small with something. Again, if you chose to do the first 15 minutes when you get back to the office, put your cell phone in the drawer. And then pull it out after 15 minutes. And you'll find that the world didn't end. And you can get caught back up really quickly. But when you demonstrate that to yourself in safe environments and in quick environments, it's easier to keep things rolling. Other questions? You got 5 more minutes here.
It's not really a question, more of an encouragement. When I started at our organization about 2 years ago, I was sort of overwhelmed at the amount of work that was transactional versus transformational that both me and my team were doing. So one of the things that I made a priority was adding tasks that would, in the long run, gain efficiencies, whether that's outsourcing something. We were doing payroll in-house and we were doing billing in-house, just to free up the time that you are dedicating already to things that you don't need to. You know, it makes such a huge difference once you have the extra time to sit and do the transformational work.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Because, as you noticed, this didn't take work off of your plate. This idea here, this doesn't take work and time off of your plate instantly. It's that thing that pays off down the road. But would you invest? Would you stay an extra hour on Thursday and Friday if you knew that it was going to save you 10 hours next month? Maybe. I know I would, but those are those things. Making that intention right now, making the hard decision to reap the benefits down the road. That's a big thing. Any other questions? Okay. Last call for questions. Oh, in the back.
Thanks. Do you have any parting thoughts on productivity of working in the office versus working at home?
Ooh.
And letting, for yourself or for your staff?
When you work from home, you realize how much time you waste at the office. Because magically the same amount of stuff gets done, but you can do the dishes, you can do the laundry, you can do the vacuuming, watch a couple episodes of Supernatural, you're all good. That being said, I do like bringing people into an office. I do like the office environment for a host of other reasons from a collaboration standpoint. I'm a big fan of balance, where if you have the opportunity to have people work from home a couple of days a week, maybe just one day a week, you will find not only are they just as productive, if not even more so, overall, what you'll find is it's better quality of life. And when people have that stress coming out, they're actually more productive in the end. That's the real benefit, is the work-life balance that you're able to achieve with that sort of thing. But yeah, you can get lost. Don't get me wrong. Working at home, you can get lost and you can lose that productivity. But for the most part, what you'll find and everybody finds is you're able to accomplish exactly the same amount of stuff while magically being able to do a whole bunch of other things. All right, I'm going to sign off there. I am running down, FYI, to Potomac D to talk about change management after this, so I'd love to see you all down there. Otherwise, thank you very much.